welcome to Sniper Sundays. It's Sunday the 14th of July. Hope you've all had a good weekend and ready for the new week. So this week I'm going to start with the dollar index and some commodities first and work my way back through the Euro USD pairs and so on, just to give us an idea of what the US dollar is doing. Give some insight as to what that's going to do next week, which can help us on different pairs. Now on the US dollar, we had this bullish move that we saw the week before last. We had this nice push up. At the beginning of the week, we had this sort of breakout above this trend line here that you can see. So we had this initial rejection here, trying to bring in short sellers. We had that move down, as you can see here on the daily. On the 4 hour. Let's just zoom in on that a little bit more, and you can see here that we had this sort of move back down. Bringing short sellers into the market, but it was only just pushing up higher even more. Then we started to stall, and we had that push down. So we've had a push lower, back up below this sort of trend line, this trend line here, and it looks like we've just created a new a lower high from this last lower high here on this downtrend. So we are pushing down now. And it looks like we're coming back down towards this 96.50 monthly key level that I have here. I've also put on this counter trend, which looks like it could be another confluence for this to come down and retest. So I'm looking at the US dollar getting weaker and pushing down into this sort of area this week. And from here, it will be a very interesting area. So initially expecting some more weakness into here. And from here, then we'll have to see whether we can break through and push lower, or whether we're going to then find support once again and create the sort of inverse head and shoulders with this left shoulder here, this left shoulder over here, and then whether we can push up higher, or as I said, whether we have the US dollar is going to continue to weaken and we're going to push lower. So that is quite important to look out for this week. The US dollar in general over the past few weeks, not few weeks, but a long time, has been quite choppy really. Even if we go to the weekly chart, we haven't seen any major sort of moves. If I just stretch this out so we can zoom in a bit more and just see clearer. You can see here, I think I mentioned this last week and over the past few weeks, you can see here, just this sort of area, we haven't had a lot of movement. You can see sort of between this 98 and sort of, let me see, 95. Let me just stretch this up to 98 and 90, let's say 96 for the round psychological figures. The sort of 200 pip range, you can see prices been retesting this sort of support, this support here, and hasn't been a move higher. But we've just been choppy, a down week, down, up, and been quite choppy. This week here we can see we've ended quite bearish, no wick at the bottom, rejecting the highs and pushing down once more. So it looks like we're going to push down this week at least to sort of that monthly support level. So looking at that, we can see that the US dollar might weaken initially at the early part of next week, and then we need to see how we react around this level. So taking that into consideration, we take that over to the US dollar pairs that we'll be looking at. So yeah, I'll start on Euro USD now. So with Euro USD, we were looking at this last week. You can see we had this breakout of this trend line here. I actually highlighted this level as the last higher low that we needed to stay above in order for Euro USD to still be bullish. And even though we have broken this trend line, this is what I keep explaining about many retail traders. They're often taught to take a short trade after a break of a counter trend line, which isn't always the best thing to do. You have to take into consideration the whole market structure and understand where the next, in this occasion on an uptrend, where the last higher low was, which was here. We also have this support level of 1.1200, which we came down and retested. Had this daily pin bar here, which wasn't the strongest, but we managed to push off that and push higher. So you can see here that we are creating higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, and we've created a higher low, and we're now trying to push up higher. Drop down to the 4 hour. I highlighted this sort of consolidation zone last week and explained that we wanted to see a sort of breakout of this in order to see where this pair was going to go next. We came up to the top and rejected, like how we've rejected here, we could look at possible short trades, and if we came down and reject the bottom of this range, we could also give long trade opportunities. So we came down, you can see here we've had that breakout lower. We'll just adjust this to the previous spike here. We can see here we've just spiked below but closed within this consolidation zone, and then we pushed up higher. Dropping down to the 1 hour, you can see here had this really nice pin bar or doji sort of candle, this doji candle here, then had another rejection with a little bit of a bullish engulfing, and then we took off and pushed up higher. Now, given that we think that the US dollar may weaken on the market open, this means that we could expect this to push up a little bit higher and maybe possibly break out of this consolidation zone. If we break out of this consolidation zone, I do think we're going to go higher with Euro USD. And then as I've marked out here, we'll just zoom out on the 4 hour. You can see here we've got this resistance level with that head and shoulders movement, where we could, if we do break out of this consolidation zone, then we'll be looking at this pair pushing up into this sort of level. Then, like on the dollar index, if we push down to this level, we could be looking at an inverse head and shoulders here, where we might push up higher, or we might break through. So on Euro USD, we might push up higher to this and break through, or we may reject this level and push back down. So that's what I'm looking out for. Sorry, we may push back down. So that's what I'm looking out for this week. I'm keeping an eye out for. But initially, I do think that we could push it and break out through this consolidation zone. But I will be watching early in the week to see if we have rejections at the top, similar to the rejections that we've had at the bottom, and we could possibly even look for an early short trade around here. So this area is quite important early in the week to see whether we can break out of this consolidation zone, and it may give us a good opportunity to take short trades from here, or continue this pair up to this sort of inverse head and shoulders level, and then look at a trade from there. On Euro GBP, we finally saw some movement last week. We've been in this for a long time from the tops here. So initially I gave like a short entry level from around these levels, anywhere within this sort of zone, I believe it was, up to this high here. Push up a little bit more, explain that we had that opportunity of pushing up and testing this the higher part of this wedge, which we tapped perfectly, had all the nice signs here, shooting stars, and so on, and bearish signs, and then we eventually pushed down. You see, once we broke down through here, then we came back up and retested this, just retesting that form of resistance here. Now, what looks quite good, if we just go to the weekly on this, is we are looking very, very bearish now. So you can see here on the weekly, we've had 1 spike, 2 spike, 3 spike, and then that 4th spike just above the previous highs here on the weekly, just to tap that significant level, or that psychological level of 0.900 before making a move down. Now, like I've shown you on other charts, often before the big move happens, if price has been stalling, we have a big push up just above the previous highs to take out some stop losses. If anyone that has a stop loss here, which is why I mentioned just to adjust that stop loss during the week a little bit higher, just to allow for the price to have that movement to push up that little bit higher before rejecting and pushing back down. Now you can see here we've had that really big rejection, really big push back down, and ending as a shooting star, and yeah, looking like the pressure is on now from the bears to push this down lower next week. Drop down to the daily. We can see here we've had a nice bearish candlestick on Friday, finally breaking out of this rising wedge formation. So we've had 1, 2, 3 rejections off that 0.900 level, finally breaking out of that rising wedge at counter trend line as well. And we can see here that we are starting to look quite bearish. So we've broken out of here. From around these levels now, it should be about 40-50 pips in profit, depending on where you took your trade, and stop losses at break even. Now, what's important for this pair, which I highlighted last week, is for us to break below this yellow highlighted region. Now, once we break out of a wedge or a counter trend line, once we break out on the 4 hour, a good tool to use is to highlight that breakout, and because we can often reverse from that breakout and push up to the upside. Now we drop down to the 1 hour chart. If we get, I mentioned this last Friday I believe, if we get a nice break and close below this level, if we get a strong close below this consolidation zone, then I really do see this pair really starting to gather steam and pushing back down to the sort of 0.8900 levels. We may play around with this area for a little bit, but we do look like the bears are on our side now. We do like the selling pressure is on. Nice little close of that 1 hour candlestick on Friday, and we do, as I said, do look like we're going to start pushing down lower. So still holding short trades on this pair, still bearish, and still looking for this pair to come down lower. We do have this little bit of support here, which is where we are sort of reacting from at the moment. You can see here. We may come down and test this, and as I said, sort of consolidate within this area for a little bit longer. But once we have a break below here, I do see this pair coming down even lower. It is possible that we still might find some support here and push back up to create a new lower high, back up into sort of these regions once again. You can see the sort of resistance area, resistance, resistance, resistance. So we could possibly push back up here, but ideally we want to just see that break now and finally push through. But being at the start of the week, we might not have that momentum behind us. It might be a little bit quiet, so we could possibly see Euro GBP continue to be a little bit in consolidation, push up to this level or around here before pushing down lower. So keeping a look out for that, but holding short trades. Euro AUD. So this pair had a big push down on Friday. The Australian dollar, as you will look at shortly, had a big strong move at the end of the day. But I am still keeping an eye on this. So obviously Friday we're looking at possibly this pair showing some signs of rejection and some signs of support. Now, if we look here, we've broken this trend line, but we've also got a new trend line here. I said 2 points make a trend line. So we've got this trend line here, because we've come down, rejected this level, and then pushed up and pushed up. We come back down to that level once again. I'll just get rid of this one for the moment. Now remember, we are short from up at this level here. So as I said, we wasn't rushing into a long trade, as we are short, so we are still just watching price retrace, make a lower high, and then pushing down lower. Now just quickly before I drop down to the next time frame, on the daily, from short trades that we're here and stop losses are now at break even, and you're still running in profit. Many people often ask me, when do you move your stop loss, like for example trailing stop losses and so on, so that it's not always at break even. What we need to do is price to start sort of making a trend, making that last lower high and lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. Now on a daily here, usually I like to do it on a daily chart, because on the lower time frames, if you move your stop loss and make a trailing stop loss, you can often be too close and you'll get stopped out. Now here we've made a new lower high, so I would have my stop loss about 25 pips above the last lower high. So this is the last lower high now. So your stop loss at break even here can now be moved about 25-30 pips, say 30 pips above the last lower high here, because as market structure, and I've explained, and this is why week on week we start learning more and more and more now, as the markets and trades that we've been in start to basically swing and we are in trend, we can pick up more and more tips along the way. So for instance, now you want your stop loss to be above this last lower high, because should price come back up and retest this level here, or break above this last lower high and close above, then it would mean that this lower this downtrend is then invalid, and this last lower high doesn't stand, and we could then push up higher. So you want your stop loss to be here, because should it break above this level, then it means that we could be in an uptrend and this pair could push all the way back up to this level and maybe even higher. So stop loss is just above the last lower high, brought down from the break even level here. Now even though we look very, very bearish on this, I just want to keep an eye on it at this level. You can see we've got this sort of level of support here that we've reacted to before. We've got this resistance, we reacted off the support sharply here, reacted off it here again, and we just need to see whether we are going to be able to actually break this. Now Australian dollar's looking quite strong, so given that fact, we may just see this push down, tap this 1.600 level, and maybe even go lower. But let's just be alert that there is a support level around here. We are attempting to sort of break out of that new trend line. I'll just get rid of this for the moment. but this is an important level to be looking at all around this sort of region, that yellow highlighted area that I just had. So as I said, anywhere from here I'll be watching price action still. Remember, bears are on our side, we are still short on this, so I am watching this to see if we can push lower, make a new lower low below this, come down to this level, perhaps break through. But I am keeping an eye on this level to see whether this breakout here through the trend line can sustain, or whether it's actually just coming down to retest it before pushing higher. So my eyes will be on this pair next week, and I will be updating you on this. But we can see a nice swing lower, and it does look like we're going to make a lower low. But let's trade what we see next week and not what we think. Even though we're very, very bearish at the moment, we could see some support from around these areas. Likewise with Euro NZD, very, very similar. Stop loss trades are at break even up here. Stop loss is at break even. Now you want to move your stop loss to we want to move your stop loss to 20 or 30 pips above this last high. So now, no matter what happens, if the trade moves up, that last little bit of percentage of your trade that you still got running, if it hits here, you'll be stopped out in profit, not at break even up here. And if we push up above this, then we can see this pair coming higher. That's why when the price comes down to sort of these levels here, you can see we're about to retest this form of support. Should we find support here again, then we could possibly looking at long trades. And from here, once we're in the long trade and we come up a couple of 100 pips and we take half of our position, then we move our stop loss to break even here. And then no matter where this pair then goes, then we'll be in profit. But I'll explain that as it comes next week, and if it does come, this is what hedge trading will be. At the moment, we haven't had that. At the moment, we do look like we're coming down for a new lower low on this pair. But as I said, I'm keeping my eyes open on these pairs, and even though it looks very, very bearish at the moment, we'll see what next week will bring. GBP USD. So I updated this pair on Friday, explained that we had this trend line coming through here, expected to come. This was on Friday morning on the morning call. Explained I was expected to come up and tap this trend line first, before seeing where we go next. That we may push even higher, and that we do have this outer trend line out here that we could also push up and test. So this level here could also come up and test. Sorry, 1 second. That we could also come up and test this level out around here. Now we are in an uptrend on GBP USD at the moment. If I drop down to the lower time frames, just on the 4 hour, firstly we can see that we had that push up higher, pulled back, found some support here, making higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, and we just made a higher high. Now if the US dollar does get weaker on market early in the week, then we can expect GBP USD to push up higher. You can see here we're now trending higher highs, higher lows, and we pulled back, but didn't. This pullback here didn't break the last higher low, and we can now just adjust that trend line. And we can see that we're pushing up to make a new higher high, but we have to see whether we can actually break through this before coming back down to go back up. But still holding long trades on GBP USD. We've hit that sort of target level that I was expecting. So we're at 100 pips on this, take 50% profit. Stop loss is at break even of where the entry was, and now just keep letting this ride to see how far this can go. But we can see now that the balls are on this side for the pound GBP, which also helps our Euro GBP trade. Should the pound continue to get stronger, we'll see Euro GBP push lower and GBP USD to push up higher. GBP CAD, a pair that I highlighted last week. Straight after I highlighted it, we saw a nice up move. Tweezer bottoms here on the 4 hour, triple bottom 1, 2, 3, showing us that rejection. This is on the 2 hour. If we go to the 4 hour, see that tweezer bottom here on the 4 hour, 1, 2, and then we had that nice push up higher. On the 1 hour, we can see various rejections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is why I say to be patient with trades, because if you see this pair come down, we see this rejection a couple of times, if we just take our time, because as we take our time, you see how it becomes more obvious. We get another rejection, then we had this last final push down lower, lower than the last 3 spikes to the downside, one push lower before the up move, just like I explained on the which was it, Euro USD, which I just explained a minute ago, that we have that last push lower before the up move. So we had that last push lower just before these lows. Good indication that price is rejecting this area one more time. We've just taken out any stops from early people with tight stop losses just underneath here, and then we take off and push up to the upside. Now if we look at GBP CAD, obviously I looked at this pair because I was expecting pound strength and Canadian dollar weakness. But if we just look at this on the weekly chart, we can see how we've been very, very, very bearish on GBP CAD. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, so many weeks of bearish movement. We need to find some support, and this week, or last week, we can see we've had this sort of doji candle. On the daily chart, we can see we've rejected that level. We couldn't manage to push up any higher on Friday, so we may still just consolidate in this area. So stop losses at break even on this trade. If you're in it, we may continue to consolidate around this area to make more sort of another weekly sort of spike to the down, off this support level. But on the daily here, we've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sort of candles showing that we're slowing down around this area, and it now may be time for an up move. If I just zoom out on the 4-hour chart, just put a trend line on this just to show it. So the inner trend line here is coming down, and we can see we're just trying to break through this at the moment. And should we break through this, then we should see this pair start moving up higher. If we go to the outer trend line, this all helps you get your understanding the direction of a pair. So you can see that's the outer trend line. So should we break out of this inner trend line here, if we can get the strength to break through, then just like GBP USD, I do see this pushing out to retest this outer trend line. Should we break through that, there's loads of upside potential, but at the moment, keeping an eye on this little area here. We are consolidating. We could still push back down and retest this sort of support level, but we want to see a nice break through this, and then we can try and tap this outer trend line. GBP JPY, so a nice chart here just to show how just keeping a chart clean and looking at price action and sort of the foundations of what you need, like the trend, using trend lines, support, resistance, significant levels, and price action, how it can really help. So we can see here, I'll just get rid of this quickly, on the daily chart, just by checking the daily chart at the end of every evening when the market closes, we can see here we had this, again, last push down below the last low here, pin bar on a daily, bullish engulfing here, so give us that good indication that we were rejecting these levels. On the 4-hour chart, we could see that we had that 4-hour pin bar. That was early in the morning. Highlighted this, looking for long trades from around this region. Had that push up straight away, but we did run into resistance around that significant level of 136.00. Now, I expected a little bit of a pullback from there because it was a significant level, and we have got lots of former resistance here, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I was expecting a pullback from that level, and which we now have. We're trying to break out of this trend line, so obviously we're rejecting that resistance as well. But at the moment, it looks like we're just forming a Fibonacci retracement down to that sort of 50% level, created a bit of a tweeze of bottoms here with a bit of a doji candle. So I am expecting more upside on GBP JPY next week. We can clear this trend line, clear this 1.3600 level. I expect to come up, sort of hit maybe that Fibonacci extension, push back down and retest this as support, and then more upside. So that's the sort of setup I'm looking for GBP JPY next week. We are looking like we've got some strength in GBP to push up higher. So keeping an eye on this setup with stop losses at break even from the lows. USD CAD, so we can see here we ended up quite bearish on the end of Friday. If I just clear this, looking at Canadian dollar getting weaker off the back of oil perhaps getting weaker as well, but oil is consolidating at the moment, as well as USD CAD. Now I've highlighted that we have got this support level 1.300 that we may come down and tap. So with long trades from here, but stop losses below 1.300 by about 30 pips, because we do have room to come down and tap this before moving higher. Now on a daily chart at the moment, we have just had that that push down lower than the previous low. So I'm interested, like I just explained on other pairs. So I am interested to see how this opens up on market open. If we push back up inside this sort of range. And if we do, then I see this coming back up to the top of the range and then pushing up higher. So on the 4 hour, you can see we just sort of had that nice pin bar at the bottom of this range, tried to push up, rejected this as resistance, and we look like we may push down lower, but I am keeping an eye on this on market open and will update. As I said, we may just have a little push lower back down to this, tap that psychological level 1.300 before having an up move, but I will be keeping an eye on this. As I said, US dollar may weaken on market open, so that may influence this just to push down a little bit lower, get the market to tap the round levels, that support level here, before making a move up higher. So we might just see even just a spike down and a rejection, which I'm keeping an eye out for. USD JPY, another pair making higher highs, higher lows, higher highs and higher lows. We have just come back down to retest that last higher low. So this is an interesting level for USD JPY. If I just also drag this along to these support levels over here, you can see that we do sort of have that large inverse head and shoulders formation. So keeping an eye on this. USD JPY could get a little bit weaker, but I'm also keeping an eye on the Japanese yen to see how that acts, because obviously US dollar could get weaker as I've explained. So I'm going to be watching this interesting level here, as I explained on another pair. When we have a breakout like this, I highlight that sort of zone with this breakout of the 4 hour, and I'll be watching price within this level now, within this area. So we've broken through the weekly support of 108.00, found support. I'll be watching price around this area. I think we could consolidate. If we break above, I think we're going to go back up to create more new highs. If we break below, then it looks like we could come down lower on this. So we'll be watching this pair. We are still long, still have my long bias from these levels. It's showing some nice rejection from this support, but I'll be watching price to consolidate within this area. If we can break higher, then I do think we could push up higher. We rejected off this head and shoulders movement, which I highlighted to you guys earlier last week. As you see, we pushed up there and pushed back down. We're now in sort of support level, so we're sort of in middle ground at the moment, just waiting to see where this pair goes next. New Zealand dollar and Australian dollar. So Australian dollar, really big push up at the end of last week. Saw a nice push up there. Daily, we're looking very strong. And I do see this pair, especially with US dollar weakness, coming up to test the 0.7050 level once again. I do see us coming up to here and possibly even higher. Now, gold is an influence on Aussie dollar and New Zealand dollar, and if gold can push higher, then I do see this pair going a lot higher. But on market open, if US dollar weakens, then this will push up higher. We can see here on the daily chart that we've had this nice Fibonacci retracement perfectly to the 61.8%. So we've had this really nice retracement here, pinged off this 61.8% and had a nice bullish move. So a nice bullish day on Friday, and we have got this major long-term trend line here that we can see that we're coming up to reject one more time. So very interesting around this level. I'll be watching to see if we break through, tap the 0.7050 level, and whether we push back down and it's a sort of a fake out of this trend line, or whether we have the strength just to break through this resistance and actually start trading above here. So I do expect this pair to come up to 0.7050, and from there I'll be watching around these areas to see how this pair acts. But at the moment, you can see we're on a good steep bullish uptrend here from this point. We're finding a lot of strength on the Australian dollar. So that's likewise with New Zealand dollar. We came down, we sort of retested that last higher low, which I was explaining, this last higher low here on the daily time frame. We'll just zoom out here. You can see this last higher low, made a higher high, came down, tested that, and now we're pushing back up. So this also looks like we could actually push up above the last lower high. See, we tapped that 61.8%, we could push up higher and trade above the 0.6700 level. But as I said, not taking it for granted. I'll be watching this early next week, seeing how the US dollar acts, but we are looking quite strong. And I will also be watching gold to see how gold reacts. If we push higher with gold, then I see this pair coming up and making new highs above this level. But just go to gold now, and what we can see here is, as explained, higher highs, higher lows, higher equal highs. Came down, couldn't break the last higher low. Market structure, once again, we see that one push down, two push down, and that third push down, rejecting that level. So then now we move our trend line from where it was, which was here, as we have broken the trend line, but we haven't broken the trend because the last lower high was here. So then we see this spike down. If I just show you what I was just explaining about when we see the 4-hour breakout, if we highlight that area like that, if we drop down to the 1 hour, if we don't break below that, then a good chance that this pair is going to then keep moving back up higher, and this is just a fake out. So this is a really good tool to use. So you can see here we come down, had that double bottom here. This is a good long entry from these levels. Should we break and close strongly below this level, then this pair would then start to fall and decline further. But we rejected that level, that initial breakout level of the trend line, which you can see here. Rejected that level one more time, and then we push up higher, and we're looking to make new highs. Now, if we just adjust this trend line to the new point, so we've got point 1 here and now point 2, we can see here that we're trying to push up higher. We've also got this trend line from above, point 1, point 2. So I do think that price is going to come up and test this sort of region here for a third time, and then I'll be watching to see whether we can break through that, come back up to make a triple top, or if we're going to push up even higher with gold. Now, commodities looking quite strong at the end of last week, so gold being a commodity, and if I just put that back there, so we have the opportunity of perhaps pushing back up to here again, maybe making new highs, or just coming up and retesting this level here on the trend line, which will then give us a guide of what pairs like Aussie dollar and New Zealand dollar are doing. Should we push up here, reject and push lower, then I think that Aussie dollar will push up a little bit higher and then push back down to the downside. But gold looking quite strong at the moment. So if this can break this resistance, then this can go a lot higher, which means that it could pull up New Zealand dollar and the Australian dollar up much higher than their resistance that they're sitting just below. So this resistance here on the Aussie dollar, and this resistance just here on New Zealand dollar. Should gold be able to break through its resistance, I think all three will push up to the upside. Now, commodities I'm looking at, because oil, obviously I was looking at oil on Friday. We have made a new high above this. We just go to the daily chart. You can see here from that long that we had down here, mentioned on Instagram, we're about 960 pips from the low here to the high. We have had that pull down, but we're trying to make new higher highs. Now, it's interesting here is because if we're going to make a real higher high, I do expect price to push up a little bit more above this, perhaps push up a little bit more early in the week, or come out and test this trend line, and then we can look at short trades. But if not, and we are just going to stall here and sort of make a double top to this last resistance here, as you can see, we've got this doji candle on a Friday, then I will be looking at taking short trades. So it's an important area here for oil. We've got this consolidation zone. So you can see here, I'll just adjust this. So on this pair pushing up higher, making a higher high, we made this on the 4 hour, this higher low here. That's where I put the range to. You can then see we push down, and that's why on Friday I was looking at this pair coming down here, but I wasn't rushing to take a sell. But I wanted to see how price was reacting to this sort of last support here that it just made. Was it going to reject off this and push back up, or were we going to break lower and then come back and retest this as resistance, and then we could look at a short trade? Now at the moment, you can see here that we have rejected the downside, so I am expecting a push back up, and I expect a push back up to sort of this region, but perhaps a one last push up above this. If we are going to see some downside, then a push lower. But given that we do have this trend line just sitting above us here, I do think we might see some strength in the commodities with oil and gold to push up higher to sort of these regions, and then we could look at possible short trades, if any. But you can see with oil, from the trade that we've been in, how it can gain strength and just keep going. So I'll be watching for all of these sort of setups next week. So that's what I'm looking at, and this is what I'm seeing at the moment. So I'm on tomorrow morning with any new setups and any new trades that appear. Have a good evening. I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.